So I just want to, there are two major themes that you pointed out. One was kind of issues of understanding measurement and just so that we understand more. And there's second kind of thing about what government action is required, right? So let's talk a bit more about measurement and then later, but let's go down to what kind of in short term, what are the government policies or scheme that you think you've seen through your work in JPAL, what are working and what more needs to be done.
Sure, sure. No, I think that's exactly those are the two things that are the most critical, which is one on the measurement side, but equally then, using that to target social protection policies for migrants. So I think the short-term migration is really an important livelihood strategy for many, and this is largely circular, seasonal in nature. So as migrants move either individually or as families, I think they face unique challenges, and this whole fundamental governance challenge has to be understood before designing strategies for research, measurement, or even designing any of the policies to address and plug these problems. So what we saw really in terms of governance issues was a twofold challenge. One was the lack of recognition to temporary residents in the destination states. And two was the inability to reach a large set of people who are consistently on the move, migrants. So I think the lack of a comprehensive, unified database of migrants meant that the inability this led to the inability of the government to respond with speed to bring a wider net of people in the ambit of existing or new programs. That was the fundamental challenge. And so even as many of these civil society organizations came together to gather information on migrant movements based on, the geographies that they were already working in or the cohorts of people that they had already engaged in or with. Those efforts went on, but I think the major issue that got exposed in this entire thing, during this pandemic was that the lack of credible data on migrants at the macro level and the profile of migrant workers, which rendered any effort to provide the social protection to them extremely challenging for the government. So I think critically credible data on migration is essential for so many reasons. It's not just for this, but for understanding reasons for migration, for the source and destination areas. Which are those? What are the living conditions of people? Understanding the nature of migration, whether it's permanent, whether it is short-term, seasonal. What are the patterns of urbanization with respect to this, and the need for housing for migrants and all sorts of other support services, the extent of financial inclusion, and so on and so forth. So I think, what is the key challenge right now in doing all of this? The key challenge is that and this is getting to your point on measurement, which is that the major national surveys do not have a uniform definition of what constitutes a migrant worker. So for instance, the NSS and the census have different definitions. National surveys typically have a higher focus on permanent migration and are unable to, adequately capture this circular nature of migration or seasonal migration. So if you look at the NSS 2007-2008, that captured migrant flows to some extent, but again, that was not comparable to the previous NSS rounds. And similarly, the census 2011 did not focus on migration flows. So then how do you work around with these differing definitions, as well as differing data sets, that it's very difficult for them to speak to each other. So such data, yeah, go ahead.
One point is that even if we solve the kind of technical definitions in our existing data sets, it's also hard to find migrants, right? The kind of success rate of sampling surveys would be much lower, or even census. It's hard to kind of find these people compared to someone who has a permanent house. So kind of apart from solving this kind of technical issues, there needs to be
Absolutely.
much more effort to investing more resource and expertise in kind of trying to focus on these people as well, right? to kind of
Exactly. And it cannot just be a policy level thing, because that is the policy architecture already exists. But sort of how are states working together? How is the center facilitating that? And how are these actually being tracked? Exactly what you said. You need more resources. You need commitment to prioritize this issue, which is something that really has been thrown to light in a very big way during this pandemic. So I completely agree that it's not just a definitional issue, but that is a starting point. And so I think such data would be crucial, for routine and systematic monitoring of service delivery of benefits that migrants would otherwise be excluded from due to the lack of proof of residence in the area of their work or the current residence. This would also help identify gaps in program implementation and the need for new interventions to address these targeted challenges. So I think over the long run, measures to access this enabling access of benefits for migrants and their dependents is essential to reduce this kind of vulnerability and the effects of external shocks. So for instance, women and children excluded from health services might incur a high out-of-pocket expenditure during such times in private facilities without the access to insurance, and this may in turn throw already vulnerable populations such as these women and children into further poverty. So it's kind of like a spiraling effect that one might see, a downward spiral, and sort of modifications and relaxations in delivering benefits of these various schemes that are not contingent on migration status are really essential to expand inclusiveness of these existing schemes. So compiling a social registry of migrant workers by actively encouraging, exactly what you said, prioritizing this issue, right? By actively encouraging registrations, because it's not easy to find these migrants through district collectorates or through sort of kiosks, e-kiosks, SMS registrations, or even allowing employers to register details of on behalf of the workers can really go a long way in maintaining a single database. And I think the Ministry of Labour has already started looking into this. I saw like, in September, their announcement to start thinking about this unified database. So I think this would be a really essential an important starting point to ensure then that the coverage of critical benefits under various central and state government schemes are ensured for migrants. And I think what one needs to remember is why are we doing all of this, right? The long-term goal is to promote safe migration. By making it viable for these workers to easily migrate where opportunities are and where sort of they wish to go, with adequate social protection measures in place which follow them where they go. And that's the ultimate long-term goal.